Tonight's program, ladies and gentlemen, we have something that's going to make you sick.
My beautiful aliens, hello, and welcome back to the Authentically Blue podcast. I am your host, Carlson. I'm recording this intro in my mama's car in the estate. This is actually one of the first episodes I recorded for season 3 of Authentically Blue, and we have the lovely Nafahad. She is back for a second episode. The first episode is actually one of the most listened to episodes. You'll hear me tell her that in the episode. I recorded that over a year ago at this point. A year and a half, maybe 2, which is kind of crazy. I think 2022 or 2023, but I will link the episode down below if you want to listen. We also talk about grief, as you can tell by the title, and in terms of grief, there's different types of grief, but we talk about death specifically. We have both experienced grief in our life. I lost my grandfather, but he raised me. I consider him a dad. She lost her mum in 2022 or 2021, yes. And it was a difficult time, and she almost lost her dad too, but thankfully he pulled through. And we discuss how the experience has been, our insights, and it's something everybody gets to experience. So I just wanted this to be a comfort episode because I think I needed an episode like this when I was experiencing grief, and I love hearing different people's stories. The timestamp will be linked down below, and thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Bye guys. I'm here with Nafahad. We have her back on the podcast. I've texted this to you a few times, by the way, Nafahad. I don't know if you know, but your podcast is the most listened to podcast. I have people telling me, who is Nafahad? I want to be her friend. Okay?
That's so interesting. It's so nice to hear. Yeah. I don't know what to say.
Nafahad is vibes. Sorry guys, she's my friend.
I don't know what to say.
And I keep telling them she's in Australia, not Kenya, so sorry. Where's Impata? I'm sorry about that. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about grief, and it's something we both experienced. And I would really wanted to do this episode with you because I feel like it's something that's not talked about as much. It's something we all experience, something people don't talk about as much, and everyone goes through it. As they say, like taxes and death. Every human experiences that one. Do you want to tell the listeners anything before we begin?
Not really. Is there anything I want to say? I talk a lot, but sometimes I have nothing to say.
We welcome that. We are ramblers. They know. They absolutely know. Can you share with us your personal experience with grief? How it's been? I know it's been a minute, so things have progressed compared to when we last spoke.
With me, I feel like my grief, to be honest, I feel like it's been a while now, but growing up as a child, from time to time I did experience death of both my grandparents. And then after that it was like, okay, to me it made sense, because when you're a child you're like, oh, old people die. You know, people who are old die, and like, oh, my grandmother was old and that's why they died.
It's only natural.
Yeah, it's only natural. And I think also back when I was young and I was losing both my grandparents and one of my grandmother's brother, who was also my grandfather, in my head, I did not really comprehend what death was. Because with like my grandmother, she used to not live with us. Later on she lived with us permanently, but like my other grandfather and her brother would come and go, stay with us for long periods of time, but would come and go. While my grandmother used to live with us permanently, but then she would occasionally leave and go, somewhere for a while and then come back. So with me, the first person I lost was my grandmother. And when she died, I was like 5 years old.
You were really
Not
young.
5, sorry. I was in year 5, so I was around 10 years old.
Yeah.
And in my head, I was like, oh, she's maybe just gone somewhere.
And
she'll probably come. But I could see people were crying. People were upset. And I think the first few days it didn't hit me, and then the fourth day it did hit me, and I was like, so she's not coming back for good. It didn't make sense. Then a few years later, like a couple of years later, I lost her brother, who was my grandfather. but we were close with him because he would come for a while, and when he came, he always bought us sweets like day in, day out. Day in, day out.
I love adults who are very loving with kids.
Yeah.
It's so sweet.
Oh, he was a beautiful man. He used to like always like take us to the supermarket and then would buy us, I don't know, for people who grew up in Nairobi, you know the fudge chocolate? It had like fudge and
with
then
the orange packet.
Yeah, with the reddish packet, and then it had a mint version.
Yes.
I remember those were his all-time faves. So
Damn.
I loved the mint, not the fudge. So the chocolate with the mint.
Yeah.
Oh,
Is it the one that was green?
yeah, with
Yeah.
the green packet.
Yep.
Oh, I don't know where they went to, but that
We
That's
might
not
be
the
able to
real-
find them in Italy. That would be exciting.
that was my all-time faves. And when he passed away, it was crazy because he just arrived and was there for 2 days, and then he passed away, but he was very, very sick. And the reason he had come back because he used to travel all the way from like Kakamega, Bungoma, around those areas, and come to Nairobi and then stay here for some time and then go and live with our family there. And then he was always just on the road, and he had just come to Nairobi to see a doctor or something, but he didn't even live.
Stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I lost my grandfather. But losing my grandfather, to me, he used to live with my cousins, so it was different. But then at the time of his death, he was again in our house. So like all those 3 deaths.
How old were you at this point?
I was in year 7 now. Like
You were
yeah,
really young.
yeah, in year 7. And I think after that I thought, oh, I'm immune to people dying because I've seen my
You thought you
grandfathers.
knew,
Yeah, and I thought, oh, like with them it was like, oh, because my grandfather was sick for a long period of time. So when he passed away, for us it was like alhamdulillah, because
He's at
he's
peace.
not in pain or whatever. And he always used to make that dua that says, oh God, take me before I'm like a burden to people and stuff. So it's like finally Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accepted his prayer.
Yeah.
And so those were the 3 experiences of death I had as a child. So I was like, oh, I'm immune to death, there's nothing that scares me, we're all like gonna die at a certain time, whatever. Then, you know, COVID happened, and during COVID then I lost my mom. And my mom's death was very it was very shocking to everybody.
It was unexpected.
It was very unexpected. She was very young, like she was just 43.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was out of nowhere. Like people who had COVID and they were 80 years of age survived. You know, it was like she just walked into the hospital and she looked fine, she talked fine, she seemed fine.
She didn't even want to go.
Yeah, she was like, I'm fine, I don't need to go to the hospital. And then, you know, like 6-7 days later, you're being called and being told, you know, your mom just passed away. And you're like, what do you mean?
What is this?
What is this? And it was like a whole movie. In my head I was like, no, they're probably a different person.
Yeah.
They've gotten this all wrong. And then it was interesting, subhanallah, because we were at home and it was like lockdown. And then
was
somebody
it
called
2022?
us. Yeah, it was 2021. And then 5 minutes later they're like, oh, somebody calls me again, and I'm like, oh, I don't even know, I'm trying to get dressed but I don't even know where I'm going. And then somebody's like calling me and it's like, oh, you know, your mom's like body is in Masjid Nur, come and like clean it. And I'm like, what is this? Like, this is a joke, this is not true. And subhanallah, like it still felt surreal, even like when I was standing on top of her and we were cleaning her. In my head it was like, she looks alive.
What
you
is
know,
happening?
yeah, she's smiling, she's awake, you guys. This is not, you know, it's not a person who's, but you just have to tell yourself like it is actually true. And subhanallah, this is the beauty of Islam. Like the beauty of Islam is like, if Islam constantly reminds us of every soul will test death. It reminds us that death is not for the old. It reminds us that death is not only guaranteed but it comes whenever it comes, and you don't choose when to die. You can't say someone will die today, because they might not die. Like, it reminds me back of the time when one of my times my grandfather was so sick, and his kids came from abroad, and they traveled and they came, and they were saying stuff like, what is this? They were saying, oh, they're coming because he's so sick, see you, and they was thought that it's his time, he's going. But just a few months later, it was my grandmother who died, and she died before my grandfather. So
you never know.
You never know when, like,
it's gonna happen.
Death hits, and that's one thing I knew. Death is very unrealistic. You could stand at the door and say, yeah, this person is dying tomorrow, today,
and then they survive,
and then all of a sudden they wake up and they look like
they're
okay. So subhanallah, I think when my Hoyolana Histu passed away, I was like, the only thing I could make sense out of it was going back to the deen and realizing this is haqq. Like, maut is haqq. Like, if she didn't die today, she was gonna die someday. But it's just, it's
all in Allah's timing, and
it happened like quicker than
everyone would have wanted.
And I think it was just, everybody was as confused and couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. Nobody could believe it. And I was just sitting here thinking, in my head I was thinking to myself, and I was like, subhanallah, like, how am I supposed to do life now without my Hoyo? Like, those are things that never made sense.
Yeah.
Like, you do hear so many people who don't have their parents,
often,
and have one parent or something, don't have both their parents, and you just look at them and you're like, oh, okay. But when it's like you waking up one day and you're like, oh, I don't have my mom, and you're like, how do I not have my Hoyo? You know, how is this possible? But it's subhanallah, like, now it's been like 3 years. 3 years since then, and it's crazy. Subhanallah, it's been 4 years. Not yet 4, but not yet 4 yet. But it's actually crazy, like, how life has continued, and nothing has been, subhanallah, like, it's the will of Allah. So he who grants that destiny also brings with it, the ability to continue living, the ability to do all of this. Grief is tough, and I think I told you this one time, it never kind of goes away completely.
No. And it's not linear. You don't experience it all in like one go. It's like you think you're okay, and then a random thing just hits you,
and you're like,
oh my gosh, what is happening?
Yeah. Or like sometimes it's tiny things that reminds you, and then some days you think, oh, you've forgotten this whole experience, and then something pops up and it reminds you. I think for me I was very, very close to my Hawiyala and Harisa. We were basically best friends, and then what happened, like, sometimes something would happen and I'm like, oh, I want to tell this to my mom, and then it's the thought that, oh, she's not here, or like you do a milestone and you'll be like, oh, I wish
I could tell
or she could see this day. So it's just tiny bits and pieces, and that's grief. Like, somebody could sit and cry for months, hours, days, but you never kind of like get over it. You never, like, once you sit down and you have the conversation and you're talking about like grief, or when you're talking about the person who passed away, it just brings this whole, like, it's like this whole like
wave of feelings that you don't feel often, or
wave of like memories, waves of what actually happened, how it happened,
and it's a lot of love. I think it's a lot of love you have for someone who's not here. And I think one beautiful thing about Islam, like you mentioned before, is that like believing and knowing that this was always going to happen, if not this way, another way, and God has a reason for everything.
SubhanAllah.
I agree completely.
Yeah, and I feel like SubhanAllah, it does bring you closer to Allah, because it just shows you how nothing in life is guaranteed.
No.
I at the beginning, I remember I would sit down and be like, what's the point of life? You know, if you're gonna just, SubhanAllah, die one day.
Yeah, I have thought that too.
You know,
I have thought that too.
Yeah, because you're like, oh, we work so bloody hard. Like when you're out here, you're like, oh my God, I need to do this. I need to get my degree. I need to get a job. I need to get a high-paying job. I need to do this. I need to
graduate. I need to work.
Yeah, you're just always needing things, and then you realize again how insignificant
it is.
It is all these things that you really, really want. You know, I think back when like my Hoya was alive and everything, like the things that mattered to me then
and now are different.
So different.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
You just see the world in a different perspective. Like, and SubhanAllah, again, I think with me, my experience of grief as a Muslim is very different, because I found a lot of like
solace.
I was able to get so much like peace and be able to cope, comfort from like Islam, my salah, my dua, my prayers, and knowing that there's something I can still do for my Hoya. You know. And while other people, like people who are not Muslim, sometimes it's harder because they're grieving this person and in their head they're like, why?
What happened?
But with me, I had the answer to why. Why did this happen? Because it said it will happen. You know. And then in Islam, it's not, you can't basically say why me, because you have to realize, you can, the qadr of God, you have to you have to accept it, and acceptance is very hard, but also accepting makes it easier on the person emotionally. Like if you can't come to terms with it, then it's harder to keep on living.
I agree.
You know.
I agree completely, because I think I talked to you about this before when previously, where with grief and how I dealt with it, I went the opposite way, where when I was looking at it with so much admiration, and I get it, it's a lot of you know, the feelings of hurt, of questioning, and I didn't have that initial I questioned everything, and I was lost for quite some time. And I think even now, looking back, like, do you believe everything happens for a reason?
SubhanAllah, everything does happen for a reason, and it's always like the lessons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has brought with every, you know, every test, every reason. But also when it comes to death, my understanding is it, when you're in your mother's womb, like, they write until when you will die. Like, they write everything about your life until your death.
But they do say, is it dua or qadr?
Dua, some dua changes qadr. Which is true. Which
your fate.
Your fate does change.
Dua,
your dua changes.
Dua is? I don't know. Dua is like it's like praying. So
prayers.
It's not, you don't have to be. So in Islam we pray 5 times a day, but dua is like supplication. You're just talking to God, having a conversation at any time, any place, anywhere. It's like in your heart or in your head. So it's true, dua does change qadr, but a lot of times, but everything other than that part, everything is written.
Everything is
happens
kind of
for a
written.
reason.
SubhanAllah, it's kind of a reason, because I remember my dad was having a conversation with me once, and he was like, life is interesting because you could basically, you know, the way I think even there's so many videos on Instagram that show this, like, you finish school at the age of 20 but take 5 years to get a job. Somebody finishes school at 25 and gets a job ASAP, blah 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 blah. But then my dad was telling it to me as a way of like lifespans, and he's like, there's a woman who would live until 90 but never have a child. But then there's somebody who would live to 40, have a child, raise their children, and educate their children, and then by 40 they're gone, you know. And then there's somebody who would live like to 70 but then have kids later, and this and that. So everything in life is like so interesting, you know, the way how things turn out and think. But I think the best thing in life to do is like acceptance.
Go with the flow.
Yeah, going with the flow is can be tricky, because you'd be like going with the flow without knowing what you're doing.
I agree. I agree.
But sometimes when it comes to like very tough tests or things that happen, we in Islam say tests for what is this? For like very big
Difficult situations.
Yeah, very big difficult situations.
Yeah.
And that could even potentially change the course of your life.
Yeah.
And subhanallah, it's so interesting. Like, I never thought I'd lose my mother. You know, nobody thinks they can lose their mother until they lose their mother. And it's like,
what on earth is happening?
Yeah, what on earth is happening? And then you have to just remind yourself, like, as much as she was my mother, she was Allah's servant. Yeah. So, you know,
I agree with you.
And you have to just be like accepting of that. And it's like, nowadays you're like, okay, things happen, and you're like, okay, you try to figure out the importance of life. And subhanallah, sometimes I'm like, am I working too hard? You know, what's the point?
On the right place.
Yeah, what is the point of all this? Because you do find a lot of people who are going through grief very differently, you know.
Like, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I took a gap year. I wasn't okay. I was like, what is the point? Where are we going? What is happening?
Yeah.
And I think being away, like for me, I was away from family. I was in London. The pandemic hit.
Yeah.
I was just getting into uni. I went into uni. First year was okay. Second year, first semester, everything came crashing down. So it's the same thing with the timing, what we were talking about earlier. And then I came here, and everyone had kind of moved on, but not as much. But I was just like, what on earth is going on? And even since then, like with me finishing, I have to, because my mind was like mental health and how you speak to your mind and how it is up there is so crazy, because I have to keep telling myself like there's a reason why you're doing this, and it's, even if it feels so meaningless and like nothing is happening, it's like there's purpose in it.
Yeah,
and I think like this podcast has helped me, because I'm like, I'm helping someone out there.
Yeah, subhanAllah.
With what I'm going through. So it's small things that just reaffirm. So if you're listening and you're experiencing that of like, what is going on? We all go through that.
SubhanAllah. Yeah, definitely you do go through this. And it's like, a lot of people, like, it's SubhanAllah, being a Muslim, we have this beautiful aspect of, you know, we are well understanding that it doesn't end with death. You know,
there's a hereafter.
Yeah. As much as also the hereafter is very like
insane.
Very stern, and there's so much that is yet to come. The understanding that you will meet this person. The understanding that you will also die. The understanding that, like a lot of times I have seen people who have had relatives like pass away and they can't do anything, and then their life goes all downhill simply because it's very hard for them to accept, which I say, it's not like I'm saying it's a bad thing or anything, but it is a reality that a lot of people live. One time I was looking after this lady, and she was like, I don't even remember, she was like 65 or something. And I don't know what we were talking about, but somehow God came into the situation. And she goes, I don't believe...
Was this in hospital?
Yeah, this was in hospital. And she had blood cancer, this lady. Poor thing.
Yeah.
And I wasn't really nice to her, and she was like, oh, okay. I wasn't really nice to her, but I'm just usually nice to people. But I was,
you don't feel like you're being nice, but she took it that way.
Yeah, and she was like, oh, okay, blah, 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 blah. I don't know what we're talking about. Then the conversation somehow ended up with God.
This is one of the best convos.
Yeah. somewhat I do understand.
Yeah.
And most of the time it's always me who brings those like conversations on the table.
Yeah.
And then as I was talking to her, she said, oh, I don't believe in God. And then I said, why don't you believe in God? And then she's like, oh, I don't know if it was she's angry with God or doesn't believe in God because of this situation. She said
she experienced her death.
Yeah, no, she says you would expect she's upset because she's got blood cancer.
Oh.
Yeah, you would expect that. But she talks about God took my mother, and that's why, you know, like, I don't believe in God because if he was real, he wouldn't have, you know, taken my mother away. And I asked her, and how old was your mother? And she goes, oh, she was 80 years of age. And you know, being African,
sorry,
yeah,
I'm laughing at your facial expression. I'm laughing at the situation, guys. My brother calls me toxic. Like, Asha, you have the darkest humor. I'm like, listen, right now I'm like editing me. I'm like, I have to clarify, guys, but go on.
Yeah.
You had the most confused look. And then you said being African.
Because, like, let me tell you, with me, when I was listening to this lady, and she's like, oh, I do not believe God exists. In my head, I'm thinking, basically because she's got blood cancer.
Yeah.
And in my head, I'm thinking, as Muslim, when you get such a condition, you have to accept this is the will of Allah. It's not easy. As I say it, again, it's easier said than done.
100%.
As you say, oh, I've got blood cancer, I've got this, I've got that. And you know, you just have to accept whatever this is. Again, but then her thinking of why she doesn't believe in God and she's upset with God is because he took her mother away, who was 80. And when she told me, because he took my mother away, I'm thinking maybe when she was 10, maybe when she was 20, you know?
Yeah.
And she's like, he took my mom away and my mom was 80. So she was like, she's lived her life.
Yeah.
And then again, it brought me back to like the African way of life, because a lot of Africans, we don't live past 80 or something. Like once you hit like 70, 80, they like your health conditions come, like a lot of, you know, yeah. And subhanallah, it takes me back to one day when my grandmother passed away. That's my mom's mom, and she loved her mother. And I
make dua for them always.
Yeah,
I always
thank
tell
you so much.
When I make my dad, granddad, yeah, subhanallah. So I remember my mom saying to some other lady in the mosque, oh, my mother died and she was very young. And then she was like, well, how old was your mother? And she was like 72. And this lady was like, but that's like old enough. I mean, she should,
like she's old enough. And then my mom was coming from a place that my father is like 90. You know?
What do you mean?
My mother is just 72.
Yeah.
And my father is like 90 years of age. So she's very young. And then, subhanAllah.
It's the same perspective this woman has.
It's the same perspective. And look at my mom, who was saying that she passed away when she was 43. Yeah, so she was way young.
Yeah.
And this lady was like, when she was saying this to me, it was very confusing, because I remember I might have sat there and said to myself, subhanallah, like, this is the reason, like, and I'm thinking, why is she upset about this? How are you upset about this? But then it brings out the aspect of grief. Whether you're 10, whether you're 20, whether you're 30, whether you're 80, nobody wants to see their loved person die.
No.
You don't want to see your mother die. You can't stomach seeing your father die. You can't stomach seeing, you know, your grandparents die. Yeah, especially people who have been through with you from when you were young and have grown up
have
with
the
you.
Unconditional love.
Yeah, subhanallah. And then you do see, like, on social media when they talk about like abusive parents and abusive this and abusive that, and you're like, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala might have never given me my mother forever, but gave me a really good mother, you know? And it's going back. I think in my grief journey, I started appreciating
I was going to ask you that next. How have your feelings of grief changed over time? I told you, girl, you're a natural like this.
So yeah, I think you start being more appreciative in life, appreciating the tiny things you take for granted. Like nobody in their life like sits down and thinks, "Oh, I'm breathing fine. I'm not in a ventilator."
Unless you have a flu. Anyway, other than that, it's right.
Yeah, like other than like nobody even remembers their breathing 90% of the time. And then
I agree.
When you experience somebody having a breathing condition and they're getting oxygen and they're getting all of this, is when you realize what the hell is happening. Like
we're very blessed.
Yeah, like how would somebody need oxygen to breathe?
That's true.
You know, it's so like it's such a big thing, but we're always walking around like billions of people are walking around without a face mask of oxygen.
That's true.
You know, it's actually weird for you to see somebody on oxygen, but that's like such a big blessing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given a lot of people.
100%.
But we all take it again for granted. So you start being very appreciative of like tiny bits
and processes,
and tiny bits of the things you
taken
have
for granted,
you've had before, all of that. So it's like I started appreciating stuff like
over time,
and like subhanallah, like I'd get into a situation, and it's a situation like my mom told me about not millions of years ago, but a long time ago.
Feels like that.
Yeah, and she, like, with me, I used to talk to my mom a lot, and she used to talk to me a lot, and I was like her firstborn daughter. So she'd open up to me and tell me stuff about, like, you know, maybe older stuff, you know.
More mature things
than I was supposed to be. Not exactly, I can't say
she was comfortable.
She was very comfortable, and she'd tell me about her life journey.
Yeah.
Like, she would say stuff like, I got married young. I should have gone to school, you know. And I was told to go to school, but nobody used to, like, the community used to tell me, don't go to school. You know, you're married now. Don't go to school. You're going to have kids who are going to look after you. But, like, the idea of her going to school was put on the table. Like, her parents were willing to support her. My father was willing to support her. But she was, like, hesitant because the community didn't want her to do it. And she would say stuff like, a lot of the time the community will tell you something, or like your distant relatives and what of that, and it's not because they hate you. And she said, I think she said something within the lines of, they're not always correct and you can't blame them. It's because it's what they used to,
what they know.
What they know. And then
it's not coming from a place of malice. However, sorry to cut you off, I was just going to say, like, I did a podcast that's not out, but it'll be out before this, is where I was talking about my ins and outs for 2025. And one of my ins was intuition and really listening to myself, no matter what, you know, other things are telling me, because sometimes I tend to go to loved ones. I'm like, what do you think? Or what do you
and then they put their
2 cents, and I'm like, maybe I should do that. And follow that. Not often, but I tend to do that from time to time. And then my out was listening to people. It doesn't matter if it's coming from a place of good or a place of malice, but just learning to trust myself again, because it's not, when we're used to being in community, we're like, they know better, not even know better, or like they know there's a safety in that. But it's like we're all very individualistic.
Very individual. So that's the thing. Like, she would tell me, people will give you advice. Some of the advice is not correct, but it's up to you to, like, figure out what is correct and not correct for you at that time. Because if you just 100% believe this is my friend and everything she tells me, or this is my aunt and everything she tells me is correct, you might end up, like, doing something. Some years later, sit down and say, I would have been so far if I hadn't listened to this person. You know, but that's not going to take you back to that day and fix your problems.
I agree with you.
So it was like appreciating stuff that, alhamdulillah, I had a mother who was able to
knowledgeable.
feed me
Yes.
her life experiences
From a young age.
from a very young age.
That is
90% of the
beautiful.
time I was like, I don't know what you're saying.
Hey, Mama, this is too much.
But then now it's like, oh, alhamdulillah, you know?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Earlier on, when you were talking about your feelings of grief and how they've changed, I think I cut you off. I don't know if you finished.
Yeah, I think that you with the, I think initially it was a bit like, it was a very hard pill to swallow.
Yeah.
And it was like, every time I try to think about it, I always explain it was movie like. I don't know what I was feeling.
It was like,
Yeah,
this
I
isn't
don't know what was
happening to
going
me.
on. And then slowly I had to digest it. And then digesting it was very interesting because, subhanAllah, like I would be like sad and unhappy. But then every time I prayed and I cried in my salah and prayed for my hoyo, I would feel a sense of happiness. You know?
Yeah.
And then it was always,
That's very beautiful.
yeah, it was always like, I think it was it was bouncing up and down. And then over the time you don't feel as sad about the situation as possible, but every time you're reminded about the person, you feel like, oh, what would have life looked like, you know? And then there's the other way you think about, you know, everything looks heaps different. Like everything doesn't look like the way it used to look like in your eyes again. So there's always that, it comes and goes, and I think a lot of people think you heal.
But you
There's
don't.
that idea of like healing, but I don't know, for me I can say alhamdulillah, as able, I don't even know what healing is, maybe, but in my head I always say like I maybe healed a while very early on, but the idea of not having my mother around would occasionally,
It would hit you.
Yeah, it would hit me from time to time. It would hit me when I had a decision that I needed her side of like the story. She wasn't there, and like, especially like when I did something that I really wanted her to see, it would come again. So yeah, grief, you might not be crying as often as you did before,
but it's moments like that, where, like, life moments, or even the small things where you share things.
You share things, but you can never say that you will get over grief.
No.
Even 35 years down the line,
100%.
you know, you'd just be sitting and wondering, oh,
it's only natural. And there's no shame in it. I think people tend to, I don't know about abroad, I think abroad too, I'd say London, like in European countries or even in TV, like, but I would also say like in African societies you'd hear people say like get over it, or kind of move on, or you're weak for that. And I don't think, you know, earlier when you mentioned how whether someone's in their 80s or someone's in their 30s and how grief affects them, or in their 20s or even a teenager, I feel like we can't minimize or maximize how something affects somebody, because like my younger brother, what affects him or what affected me at the age of 13 was huge to me. What affects my grandmother in her 70s is huge to her. So we can't minimize or it is what it is. Do you think
Very
that comes in?
My brother, yes.
Okay.
And what you had was the cats breaking the glasses outside, but it's okay. It's the much buzzer soda, and they're hitting while they walk across.
How are you feeling? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine, alhamdulillah.
Okay, that's good. I was going to ask you coping mechanisms or strategies that have helped you navigate grief, but you've kind of mentioned Islam for that one. Are there any
other strategies?
I was going to say specific rituals, but you also said that sounds very like holistic. Like, what like juju is that? Alright, next question.
And I think also my siblings, now that I've mentioned, it's just like including my prayer and whatever, knowing my siblings were there, like would occasionally talk about my hoyo, so it was not something that was off the table, and that helps with healing.
Should we pause?
Yeah.
You've kind of touched on it. Who or what has been your biggest support during your grief journey?
My biggest support during my grief journey. Oh yes. So with my supports, I think my family, my siblings, because we've been going through it together. And I feel like whenever you're going through anything in life, if there's somebody who you're going through with it, it makes it feel
Less daunting.
It's not less daunting, but it's just idea of I'm not
Togetherness.
alone. Yes, I'm not alone, and just having a chat, like me and my sister most of the time. Also my small brother and my elder brother, we sit around and we talk about my mom for who she was, and just like things she would do, things she would say. We have a good laugh about moments we had, and it's so interesting, subhanallah. And that just these people who are going through exactly what you're going through, having a conversation with you, it gives you that, it's okay. Like it's okay.
It's gonna be okay.
It's gonna be fine.
Insane. And
as long as I've got you. And sometimes I don't know how I would have done life as like an only child or something.
Impossible.
And even when I see only children, I remember it once was my dream. It's like, why was I
gonna say that?
Why was I on my own? Why do I have these siblings? All of this, why are they here? But nowadays I see it like, subhanallah,
it's a blessing.
It's a blessing. Different personalities, as I just said to you.
Different sense of things.
Yeah, different sense of understanding. But it just helps like keep you there, keep you going. Like you could probably have a bad day and you're like, oh, this was so hard and this is this, and you feel like those things you would tell your mother, now you tell each other. Like I feel like before this we were all individuals with our mother who was there, like everyone complained to my mom. Yeah. And then now we have no other choice but to tell each other stuff. Like even things you don't want to tell each other. You're like, oh my god, you know what?
It is what it
this
is.
happened. And then they're like,
we listen, we don't judge.
In my family, they do judge.
They do judge.
They do. And it's crazy because like you'll see my small sister saying to me random things about like, or sometimes I would be doing something, she's like, don't do that, I told you about this, and you're like, you're not my mother.
You're not my mother. Don't listen to me.
Exactly. That's the vibe. A lot of the times it's like, or like sometimes it's like this, and sometimes it comes from a place like, you're younger than me, can you behave?
Can you calm down?
Can you be a child? But then again, sometimes I walk away and I'm like,
that was true.
Yeah,
that was wisdom.
That was like, Or sometimes I'll call my sister and I was like, I messed up, I did this, and she's like, no, why would you do this? It's the same like conversation
energy
that you would have with like your mom, and I'm like, oh, but you're smaller than me, why are you telling this? Or like the other day, my bloody 13-year-old brother is trying to tell me stuff like, oh no, you know what, you should do this and this better because of this and that. And I'm like, don't school me. Who are you? Exactly. Go back to school. Like, leave me alone.
I know.
So yeah, that's happening. So it's like, it's so interesting, like the dynamics of
and
what life is,
and how they end up being,
and how they end up being.
That's
and
beautiful.
It's crazy. But what is so interesting is like, my mom obviously was older than me, but sometimes she'd tell me stuff and I'd be like, maybe don't talk to this lady, or don't talk to that lady, they're definitely bad people. And then the next day my mom will come back and be like, yeah, so I went to the college. I'm like, why do you go to this person's house? I told you don't go. And that's what's happening, because I was the young one trying to like tell off my mom,
and that's happening.
And it was because of that relationship we had.
That is surreal.
Yeah. Wow. It's so crazy. It's so crazy. So sometimes I see my small sister and brother doing it to me, and I'm like, I understand where it comes from my elder brother, because it's always like, oh, you're always just wrong. I know, even last time I told him, I'm never right in your eyes, so I'm just gonna do whatever I'm doing. Yeah, because with you, I will never be correct.
Yep. I'll do. I love that. How can friends and family best support someone who is grieving? In you, like from your experience, what did you enjoy, or what was like, this is too much? Is there anything you think you'd have needed more? Because I know it's different for everybody.
Yeah, I know it is, and that's the thing. I can't even remember. Like, I do have a lot of friends, and they all reached out to me. Majority of my friends reached out to me, may God bless them, and were like, how are you going? We heard the news. What is happening? And and it's like, subhanallah, I feel like with me, some people, like, I've had people who've gone through grief who are like, I hate when people randomly reach out to you and they haven't talked to you in 10, 20 years, just to be talking to you about, like, your situation at that time. But I don't know, for me, it felt like this person really
cares.
Yeah, like,
it was a sense of, like, comfort, but like solace to some degree.
Yeah, like, I think back after when I finished, I felt like, oh, this is actually like a really good friend. Like, they looked for me. Some people even came to me. But the thing is, like, it was crazy. After my mom's death, my dad was sick. He was in the hospital. We had to move with a different relative, so we weren't at home too. So, like, people would come to try and see us, and they'd be like, hey, I came all the way to your house, but you guys weren't there. Where were you? And then after that we moved, so some people who, like, were abroad and then came back to Kenya would come to visit me, and they would not know where I was. And obviously my number changed, a lot of things happened, and, like, they would text me on Instagram like, we went to your house, you don't live there anymore, where are you? And I'm like, oh my god, no, I live in a 7 different area. And just finding out how I was going, which was very nice. And I feel like a lot of people do need that type of support, especially when they're going through grief or whatever, because they need that person to tell them, like, it's okay, you'll be okay. Because it's not easy. Like, again, if I had not my salah or anything, I feel like I would just go really, really down. And having that person reach out to say, yeah, how was your day today? Like, some people, grief does take a really big toll on their mental health.
100%.
And getting that type of support from someone reaching out, looking out, trying to figure out. And then there's also that idea, sometimes not everybody knows what has happened to you, which is also very interesting. Because, like, I would have conversations, like, a year later with somebody like, oh, and how's your mom? And I'm like, oh my god, this is gonna be so crazy. And then you tell them my mom is dead, and they go, what the hell do you mean? And I'm like, yeah. And then you have to tell them the story again, what happened, and this, and it's like, at that beginning, like, when it was a year, it was very fresh. It was like I was reliving the situation again. I think after the second and the third year, it wasn't as much.
It was less.
Yeah, it was less. Like,
and was it awkward with people, or was it not as much?
Like, some people who called me, some of them, it was very awkward conversations.
Yeah, because I was gonna say, it's hard to escape them awkward conversations with people sometimes.
Yeah, like, somebody I hadn't spoken to in a long time, and they would reach out, and you're like, okay, hi, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, this, and sometimes I think I prefer text. I'm like, what are we saying to each other? What is going on? But subhanallah, nonetheless, I felt like a sense of thank you so much. I think I felt very appreciative for the sake that they took their time to reach out
100%.
And figure out how I was doing. Also, the estate we lived in was such a beautiful estate. They had this, like, community, so we would, like, even when my mom was sick, the day before she got really, really sick, we did, like, tea, and I took tea to the community gathering to say, I'm sorry, my mom's not coming, she's sick, but it was her day to cook tea, so here's the tea that I was made to cook. And then they were like, oh, sorry, the meeting had been cancelled or something. You're fuming 10 liters of tea.
Oh, hell no. What did you do? Did you do the watchman?
Obviously, I went to the watchman and I said, imagine, I took the tea back home, I put it in our normal 1 liter thermos, because we had this big thermos that the people, like, I don't know.
Was it silver?
Only know, that's silver outside that looks like a tap, and you, like a dispenser. Yes. And I said to the I took 1 liter home, and I asked that lady that I was taking to it. It's like, do you want a liter of tea? And she's like, yeah, no problem, I'll take it. So she took another liter home.
It's like a warm hug.
And then I took 1 liter to, I think, my aunt, a liter to one of my mom's friends, and then the other the rest I gave it to the SRAs. But it was a lot of tea. 10 liters of tea was a lot of
wild.
tea.
I can't even picture that.
Was it 10 or 5? It was around there. It was like
a lot.
5, 10. Yeah. It was a lot of, like, because I remember I used 15 packets of milk.
Oh, what type of milk was it?
I don't know. It was KCC Golden Crown. I still remember the yellow
and white package.
I don't even know if the Golden Crown is still there. Do you think it's still there?
Oh, it's there.
Golden Crown? I haven't seen it. I've just been seeing Ilara.
I'll get it for you tomorrow when I go.
KCC Golden Crown.
Yep.
Yeah.
With the mini white yellow thing.
Yeah, I think I used like 10 packets of that, and then I put like 3 more, and then each packet of milk was a packet of water.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's amazing.
It was crazy.
I think when you talked about people reaching out, like my aunt, when she experienced grief, she didn't want to deal with people calling her. So when people were like, Allah yarhamah, like if extended family members only hear someone's died, she doesn't call them immediately on the day because of the PTSD she got. But with me personally, I would say with other people, like,
obviously don't do it on the day. I feel like if you hear somebody's family's passed away, don't go to them. You know, like I'm Somali, so Somali people walk up on the day, they're there for 3 days and then they disappear. You know, and I feel like if you could potentially be with them on that day, okay, great, but sometimes on that day they're not themselves,
100%.
and the day after they're not themselves, and so is the 3rd day. So if you call them like on the 5th and the 6th day when they're a bit calmer, you can potentially have a more like a better conversation.
Like, I'm here for you.
What's going on? How are you feeling?
Okay?
How your siblings going on? Yeah, all of that. It's better when you have this conversation later.
For the friends and for people reaching out, I think for me what worked was like people who I'm close to. Those mattered. However, I will say this distant, like my dad's side of the family, his only one person called on his side, biological dad, not stepdad, and that messed me up. I was like, how dare you not call, say sorry. I'm sorry. Like my granddad was an angel, like he was an amazing person, and it just, whereas the eldest brother, he called me the day of the second he had it. He was like, I'm here for you, like so that meant a lot. But also so I don't know, it's just an interesting time.
I feel like that's the thing. You feel people who are related to you should they should like call, they should text. That's the thing. What happens is in those instances you kind of figure out who is who. That's why I'm saying to me it mattered who reached out.
What else? I feel like I've asked you this so many good times, but what have you learned about yourself through the grieving process?
What have I learned through about myself? SubhanAllah, I don't think I sat down and thought about myself and who I am when I was grieving at all. Like, I don't know. I think if I was to look back, SubhanAllah, I think I feel like I was more resilient than I thought I would be in that situation, because I never expected that situation. But again, it's like from the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I got that strength to claim my resilienceness. What else did I think of myself of the grieving process? I think I just became more grateful as a person. I became more understanding, and I think as I learned more about what death actually is, because in my head, again, all the deaths I saw was young, it was older people. Understanding that death is sudden, death is inevitable that comes unannounced, and it's a must. All of that. Yeah, all of that. Yeah, and it was like, to myself, I was like, okay. It was understanding all of that.
Maybe it's the delivery. Okay. Oh yeah, you're saying resilience.
Yeah. So there was all of that, being grateful, understanding, and knowing exactly what death is.
Yes.
To me, I understood you could lose somebody who means the most to you. So now I feel like when I go down Instagram, before I would go down Instagram and somebody would talk about how they lost their husband, and in my head, yes, I understand they're in pain and they lost their husband, but that lived experience makes you feel exactly what they're feeling.
And grief is one of those things that, as much as you want to empathize, feel for, you don't get it till you get it, till you experience it yourself.
Yes, you just, when you hear somebody's going through it and it's fresh off the bat, you just know exactly what they're going through. Not exactly, I want to say exactly, but there's a level of understanding. Yeah, there's a very deep level. Once you experience what it is, you're like, subhanallah, like you hear somebody saying, I just lost my husband, because like you'd think, they just got newly married and lost their husband. Great, at least they didn't have a kid and they can continue and have another husband. But then when you go through death, you feel like, to this person is never coming back, never replaceable. Yes, they might go and have another husband, but in the back of their head, they're always going to think about the first one, or like you would see people who, like, I randomly found a page of this girl and she had just gotten married to the love of her life for like 6-7 years, and they went on a holiday, and then he got hit by a car or something while he was walking back, and her whole Instagram page was about this guy and her counting how many days it's been without him, and how many and how many days this has happened and all of this. And I was like looking, and I was going through, and I was feeling like, I didn't do it this way, like I didn't count the days, but this is how desperate this person is.
That's their way of dealing with it.
Their way of dealing with it, the way of like holding so much onto this. And I was just like feeling like I completely resonated with this girl, and a year later, him and their friends went somewhere to where they like scattered their ashes, because I don't know, there were some type of Asian, he was cremated, and then she saw like a bird do something on the plane, and and in my head, you're like thinking, definitely she will think this is a sign. As a Muslim, I know it's not a sign, but I'm like, it's this, like she's hanging on to the desperation, the whole minimum,
the devastation,
and you just hold on to like the bare minimum. Because I remember like the times when I would go to my mom's grave and I'd just make dua with her standing there, and I don't know if, but in the Somali culture, it's like very taboo for women to go to the graveyard.
My mom actually took me for the first time when she was pregnant, and everybody was like, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "My daughter hasn't gone to my father's grave. Like I need to take her before she leaves." And everyone was like, "Majini watakuingia, sijui nini," and all these different things. And I just felt like, "Hoyo, just stay to the side because these people are freaking me out." I'll go like make interest like grave etiquette, like Islam. This is how people do it and all of that, but.
I think I visited my mom's grave like a couple of times after she just passed, and I couldn't tell anyone I was going. I did go one time with my siblings, but it was like, if you tell people, they're like, oh, what is she doing and all of that. But it's always like, yeah, subhanallah, it's finding.
And look, you want to say fuck them?
Yeah.
Okay, whatever works for you and builds with you, and that's
100%. It's like it's crazy what happens with grief. So just being able to, subhanallah, just look on the outside and be like grateful for, the journey you've gone through, and grateful that your siblings are doing okay mentally. And
because
all
it
of
messes
that,
people up crazy. Like
I was saying, and going back to the question of what other character traits did I find out about myself? Is it that?
Yeah. What have you learned about yourself?
About myself, I think, other than being appreciative and all this, I found that I was able to just be in charge of my siblings.
Be independent in a way you haven't been before. Fully own up to the
100%,
role of
just
big sis, kind of not filling in her steps, but being there in a way of loving and taking care of them,
and just
mama bear.
Trying.
No, you're doing a wonderful job. Even hearing you today, I didn't tell you earlier, but I was like, girl, I salute you.
No, it's like,
tell me what you need, I'ma help you.
SubhanAllah. You just have to be very you just have to be very independent. You have to be very strong, especially for your siblings. Because I have younger siblings.
It gives you the strength.
And
may Allah continue making it that way. Make it easier for you. What advice would you give someone who's currently experiencing grief?
SubhanAllah, I don't know. I really don't know. And there's this people who always say it's gonna get better.
Don't let them lie.
It's gonna be the same.
It's gonna be the same. Not to make the situation worse.
It's gonna just be the same thing. Of what's going on.
There's this thing I usually fiddle with. I don't know where it's from. I'll find it. Don't worry.
I hope it's not going into this spaces.
No. I'll find it. It's okay. What we're saying is more important.
What was I saying?
It's like my comfort thing when I'm feeling a bit anxious.
My advice to somebody who is going through grief is subhanallah, I just feel like I'll tell them pray. Pray as much as you can, and cry whenever you feel like you want to cry. And I will say, I don't know, but there's some people who don't talk so much about this person who's passed away because they feel like they're not happy, or they're not capable of doing it, or they feel like they're so devastated they can't have a conversation about this person. That it is okay to have a conversation about the person that has passed away. And it's like, subhanallah, like a lot of my friends in Sydney, they would hear me talk about my mom 90% of the time, and then once in a while, I think one day I did tell them, oh yeah, my mom passed away. And I think a girl said to me, after a while, the way you always talked about your mother, I never thought she was dead. And I sat there and I said, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to tell you. I think somebody was talking about her mother
and you were like,
passing away recently. And I was like, how has that been for you? And how has it been for the family? And this. And she just felt like I could resonate with her. And she was like, oh, yeah. And what was the hardest part? And I was like, just having a conversation with her. And I think one of my friends approached and I was like, and then I started opening up. And when I opened up, my friend was like, she said, when you said to us on that day, it was a retreat, like an Islamic girls retreat, that your mom passed away, I never knew. Like, you've always talked about your mom
so lovingly.
She's because sometimes I was like, oh, my mom told me about this, or this is something, this happened, or once in a while, or when I used to do this, my mom used to say this about it, and this, and she just used to look at me and say, I never knew that.
Please, singles inferno. Alright, my last question for you, second last, is there anything else you'd like to share about your experience with your process with grief? for the listeners before we bounce?
I would like to share about my experience. Anything else?
Yeah, you've shared that, but is there anything specific that crossed your mind, or you'd want younger you or your siblings or just someone to know they're going through grief?
SubhanAllah, I don't know. I felt like grief is a lot of emotions. You will find emotions that you did not know
Existed.
like are emotions. You would also like you would never think or like I don't know, because I was always a happy-go-lucky person.
Yes.
I was never like deep thinking. Everything was very shallow on my like I dismissed a lot of things. So then when you go through grief, you do change as a person.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, sometimes it's only easy to say that once you go through grief and understand grief, you do grow as a person too. Whereas people who are really battling with grief, they tend to, it's like you're trying to be just you and feel okay. But there's this big thing that's moved you, and it's like you just have to allow it to shake you. If you feel like you want to cry. If you feel upset, tell somebody about it. If you feel, get your support system and get your safety net and get your people, and and that's how I think you can
deal with that.
That's
the advice like what you want to end the podcast with. I love that. Definitely gonna. That's amazing advice. I feel like I don't even have anything else to add.
I think grief is just this big thing that, subhanAllah, when it hits you like this lightning bolt. The thing that makes you go through this gift is always very sudden. And because everybody grieves differently, it's harder for people who experience sudden death than people who experience death which they know are coming. Like, if somebody has been diagnosed with cancer, their tendency to go is very high. So you already grieve at the fact that this person's getting cancer, so you're going through that. So when they pass away, it's not like crazy, but it's happening and you see them struggle. But when it's a sudden death, it's like, oh my god,
what on earth is going on?
What is going on?
I hear you. I love that, and I agree. Every time I end the podcast, I usually ask the previous guest to ask the next guest a question, and the last guest asked you, he's called Jalal, what is your hidden talent, if you have one?
My hidden talent, I think, is reading emotions. That's something I found out recently. Like, I can look at somebody, we can talk about something, and they look like they're happy about this, and it's very... Did that come in?
It did.
Okay. My hidden talent is I'm able to read a person's body language and their emotions. Something that I just discovered. Like, I could be in a room and I can talk to somebody and I'm able to pick up quickly that this person is maybe uncomfortable. This person is this. And then it gives me a small task to figure out, like, I can tell he's uncomfortable, but what is making them uncomfortable? I can tell she's not happy, but why is she unhappy?
It feels like
it's like I'm able to read the room, and not read the room, but read people and their personality. Like, somebody be like, I know. Like, sometimes I'm like, maybe I'm in the wrong field, because like you hear people, somebody will be like, I'm so happy to do this, and I'm like, that didn't sound like the you usually give. So no. You're not happy about this.
Something is off.
Something is off.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Oh wait, do you have a question for the next guest?
I do not know what questions I would have.
I will text you.
Yeah,
you will answer me via text.
Yeah, because in my head I'm thinking it would be nice to have a question.
Yeah.
If I knew whoever the person was going to be, but what question can I ask them?
Actually, the next person I'm going to interview, although I like keeping anonymous, is going to be, she's a Somali She wrote a book on Somali mental health. So I think you might find that interesting.
Yeah, why she got into mental health?
Why she got into mental health? All right.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Why did she get into mental health?
Thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, you probably have that as one of your questions, don't you? Why did she get into mental health?
Yeah, but also
we could probably ask her, what personality does she have?
What personality does she have?
That she feels like is very meant for like the mental health field.
Yeah. I love that.
Or what personality she has that she takes pride in.
Okay. Good. That is beautiful. Thank you so much, and thank you for being here again.
No problem.
The listeners are gonna love
having
this.
me.
Of course. Editing me popping in to say, I hope you enjoyed the episode. We have the lovely Nafahad on, and she is amazing, as you can tell. She's very headstrong, she's very comfortable in her own skin, she's very adventurous, and I'm really grateful to have her as a friend, and look forward to more episodes with her. This was more heavy, but we're going to do a lighter one with time, and I'm sending you love if you're experiencing grief. I hope you take it easy, and I hope this episode gave you some sort of comfort. Alright, my beautiful aliens, see you next week with another episode.